The coronavirus crisis has accelerated a lot of things. The number one being working from home. So I think that's going to continue even after we have vaccines and we have been able to eliminate COVID-19. We are going to continue to see more people working from home because companies now have realized it's possible to be productive.
Hi and welcome to another episode of the peopleHum interview series. This is your host Anushka at peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end, one-view integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award for HCM that is specifically built for crafted employee experiences and the future of work. We run the peopleHum blog and video channel, which receives upwards of 400,000 visitors a year, and we also publish several interviews with well-known names globally every month. We have with us today Leigh Branham. Leigh is the founder at Keeping the People Inc. and specializes in talent management, employee engagement, exit interviewing, and many more. Leigh helps organizations analyze the root causes of employee disengagement and turnover in order to develop and implement strategies to become employers of choice. He is also a frequent speaker to national and international audiences on the 7 reasons employees disengage, managing and making 4 generations of the workforce, and the 7 reasons employees disengage and beating the bear market through engaged employees. His most recent book, The 7 Hidden Reasons Employees Leave, How to Recognize the Subtle Signs and Act Before It's Too Late, was selected as one of the top 30 business books of the year. His first book, Keeping the People Who Keep You in Business, was named one of the top 3 books on the topic and has been published in several foreign language versions. We are so happy and honored to have someone of his stature today on our interview series. Welcome, Leigh. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you, Anushka. I am looking forward to speaking with you, and greetings to all who are watching.
Thank you very much. The pleasure is absolutely ours. So, Leigh, diving right deep into the interview, can you tell us a little bit about your company, Keeping the People Inc., and the great work that you do, also what its goals are?
Well, I come from a background helping individuals through changes and transitions in their careers, and I had the opportunity to work with an organization to help them. It was an engineering company that was bleeding employees in Southern California, where there are several defense and aerospace firms, and they were pirating away each other's engineers. So they brought me in to work with managers to help them find a way to get the engineers to see that there are opportunities within the organization instead of just instinctively, impulsively accepting an offer with another competing company. So we designed a series of workshops for managers to train them to have conversations with employees, to get them to be creative about making lateral moves that could eventually be upward moves within the organization. And that's what got me started as an independent consultant back in the late 1980s. And then I began to collect information and research on what best practice companies were doing to retain employees. And then we had a great recession happen in, the big one was 2008, 2009. But in 2001, we had a very sharp downturn in the economy. And that's when I began to speak locally within my community in Kansas City about retaining employees' best practices. And I was researching and finding every article I could on what companies were doing creatively to keep their employees. And I didn't see anyone else publishing a book on that topic. So that's when I came out with the book, Keeping the People Who Keep You in Business. And that was my first book. And the publication of that book attracted a lot of interest, and I began to speak nationally and internationally. Yeah.
That's great, and congratulations on the success of both your books. It's incredible.
Well, thank you so much. The book, The Seven Hidden Reasons Employees Leave, was based on research that had been collected from exit interviews by a company called the Saratoga Institute in California, which is a subsidiary now of PricewaterhouseCoopers, the large accounting firm. And they had been doing third-party exit interviews as a consulting firm with some of their client companies. But they had not been analyzing the data. So the data was just sitting there from 20,000 exit interviews. I found out about it and I contacted them and I said, would you let me analyze your data so that I could publish the results of it? And they said, yes, if you put our name on the front cover of your book. So that's what I did. And my analysis of that data resulted in the book, The Seven Hidden Reasons Employees Leave. And the only reason I say that they're hidden is because when you ask managers, what do you think is the number one reason employees leave? Guess what they say? They say money. They say pay. And the reason they say this is because in the exit interviews, most employees don't want to burn a bridge by telling the real reason they left. And so most employees do get a pay increase when they leave. So it's truthful when they say, well, more pay. And the exit interviewer writes down more pay, but they really haven't gotten to the real reason that started the employee thinking about leaving in the first place. So when I say the seven hidden reasons employees leave, that's what I'm referring to.
That's great. That's some phenomenal work you've done there, and the great analysis of the research that you actually worked on. That's amazing.
Yeah, I read every single one of the 20,000 exit interviews. And as I was reading, I was sorting them into categories. And so the seven reasons are those seven categories.
Great. That's just amazing. So coming to the second question, Lee, we're all familiar with the term employee engagement and to an extent with ways how to ensure that in the workplace. So in your opinion, can you tell us a little about employee disengagement based on your 7 reasons employees disengage?
Well, yes. The first reason employees disengage is because they come into the organization with an unrealistic expectation. And that could be the fault of the employee, and it could be the fault of the company. In, recruiting, sometimes recruiters exaggerate or mischaracterize the organization in order to make the sale, so to speak. So the number one reason, when I say the number one reason, I just say we list it first in the book because it's the reason that it's the number one reason for short-term disengagement and departure is this shock of coming into the organization and realizing, wait a minute, I'm not going to be reporting to the person that I thought I was, or I just don't like the kind of work. Sometimes bank tellers, for example, customer service people who deal with nasty customers in any business, whether it's hotels or banks or whatever, the first time they have an encounter with a nasty customer, they say, no, this is not for me. So one of the things that, for example, Wells Fargo Bank years ago, to avoid that, they had a little video, a virtual representation of an angry customer banging on the window of the bank and saying, why is my account out of balance? And they do this before they hire. They do this as a way of screening applicants so that by the time they do hire someone, that person is already aware that they're going to be having to deal with angry customers. So managing unrealistic expectations is the first best practice, and it comes from the first reason employees disengage, which is the sudden shock of realizing something they didn't know about before. Um, so, I don't know if you want me to go through each of the 7 reasons. Would you like me to do that? Okay, the second reason is they're in the wrong job. That for whatever reason, they were put into a job where they're not fully using their talents, and so that leads to a lot of frustration, and a lot of companies treat employees as if they're playing checkers instead of chess. And each employee is different, just like a chess piece. And so the problem with a lot of managers is that they don't treat employees that way. They treat employees as interchangeable parts. And it's no problem. We'll just switch that employee into this job, especially at low-level jobs. They do this. And so not understanding that person's true talents is the second reason. The third reason is lack of feedback and coaching. And this became more of an issue, I think, with the millennial generation who grew up with what we call helicopter parents who were constantly coaching and so forth. And so managers who were baby boomers were not used to coaching because they grew up in an environment where they were just thrown into the water and said sink or swim. And so they had to learn new skills. And frankly, a lot of boomers were very resistant to having to give feedback on a continuing basis. So knowing how to give performance feedback is something organizations can do. They can train managers on how to do that and to do it more frequently than they were used to. In fact, a lot of organizations have now abolished the performance review and switched to a whole new paradigm of giving frequent coaching sessions. And some companies are saying you will meet with your employees at least once a month. Some are saying twice a month. And so it's like constant performance reviews. So that was the third reason. The fourth reason is lack of career opportunity, lack of perceived career opportunity within the organization, and lack of learning opportunities. Learning is obviously very important because the pace of technological change has just accelerated in the last couple of decades. And so the need for constant learning is really important. It used to be that with baby boomers, they would, their expectation was once you're in the organization, you don't need constant learning. But with millennials, they have a very different expectation. They don't expect to stay with an organization for 10 years the way boomers did. Most millennials are willing to move on in 2 years or less sometimes. And so what they want before they leave is to know that they have made their resume better while they were there. And so the focus on learning has just only grown more important. So learning and career development is the solution to reason number 4. Reason number 5 that employees leave is they simply don't feel valued or respected. And if I had to point to one reason that is the most common reason for employees leaving, this is probably it. It usually means that the manager is not paying full respect to that employee. Sometimes bias enters into the equation, whether it's gender bias or racial bias or whatever. So there's a lot of training that needs to be done on that in that area. But very often it comes from just sending signals to the employee that you don't value them. Something as seemingly unimportant as eye contact. If you bring an employee into your office and you're supposed to be having a conversation in them, but you're looking down at your computer the entire meeting, that sends the impression to the employee you're not important. So managers need to be trained in this. Recognition is important. Understanding that employees, when they do achieve something, that needs to be acknowledged. And it doesn't need to be a formal recognition program. What it needs to be is a habit that the organization is constantly reinforcing for managers to watch their employees. And when they see them do something well, they jump in immediately and they say, see what you did there? That's the strength that you have that I really value, and it means a lot in terms of our customer service. And I really want you to know that we appreciate that. So, so that's a big one. That's number 5. Reason number 6 is lack of work-life balance and well-being. Just a general sense that the company cares about your life, not just your work life. But this is especially important now in COVID. It's happening, and people are working virtually at home, and the importance of staying in touch with them virtually is accelerated to a much greater importance. It means having good benefits. It means listening to your employees about what kind of benefits they feel they need and want. One of the companies I've worked with has a benefits committee, a new benefits committee that meets on a regular basis and discusses, are there any new benefits that we think employees would love to have? And are they workable? Are they realistic for us to implement those? Probably the biggest thing here is understanding that sometimes you are demanding employees' effort more than is sustainable. And we see this in what we call cultures of sacrifice, that ask employees to sacrifice their weekends and their evenings, and to understand that sometimes you just need to tell them you have to take a vacation, and we're going to make you take a vacation. In fact, there's a company called Booz Allen Hamilton that has a policy of forcing some of their hardworking consultants to do exactly that. The final reason, and not the least important reason, is actually one of the most important reasons, is the loss of trust and confidence in the senior leaders of the organization. There's an old saying that the fish rots from the head down, and some cultures are just toxic cultures because of the senior leaders in the organization. And I think, once we had some scandals, there were several scandals in the early 2000s in the United States. Enron was one of them. WorldCom was another, where millennials began to wake up and say, wow, there are a lot of corrupt CEOs out there. So I think they have their antenna out about senior leaders, and are very wary of going into an organization that has an unhealthy culture at the top, but not just with this top person, but with the team of senior leaders. So anyway, those are the 7 reasons. Our problem as a manager is to figure out which one of those 7 reasons might be the one that any given employee is thinking about as they contemplate, am I going to leave this organization?
Right.
And yeah. And it's up to the manager to meet with each employee on a frequent enough basis so that they can check in and say something that's very simple to say in a what we call a re-engagement discussion. And the re-engagement discussions begins with the manager saying, I just want you to know I value your contributions here. We want to keep you here. And I just want to check in and see how you're doing and, and start a conversation based on that.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. And thank you so much for just encapsulating all the 7 reasons in a quick 5 to 7 minute response. I really appreciate that, and that's great. I think each of these 7 reasons are really noteworthy, and it's great how managers really need to, point out and notice one of these reasons why their employees are often disengaged at work, and get them back and give them a sense of direction. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, being disengaged is something that can happen early in the employee's life cycle, and they don't necessarily leave the organization when they're disengaged. They, you know, they look around, they think, well, I don't want to leave now because it won't look good on my resume that I was only here 4 or 5 months. So I'm going to stick it out and I'm going to continue to see if I can make things better. So it could be a year or more before the employee actually starts to put a resume together and begin to look for a different job. But during that time, the employee can be re-engaged. So that's a message. That's a very important message to managers. Is if you need to be meeting frequently enough with the employees to recognize the subtle signs that tell you they are becoming disengaged. And that can be simple as nonverbal behavior, just the way they walk, the expressions on their faces, if their performance drops. You can tell when an employee is becoming disengaged if you're paying attention. And if you're not paying attention, then maybe you don't care enough. And there are a lot of managers who shouldn't be managers. And that's another major problem in organizations. There's a company in California that has what they call a bad manager identification program. And I can't tell you exactly how it works, but they take very seriously the job of selecting managers. And some organizations have a leadership evaluation program where you have to go through a battery of personality inventories before you're selected to even become a manager. So
That's great. That was a really enlightening response, Leigh. Thank you very much for that.
you're welcome.
So coming to the next question, can you tell us a little on your first book, Keeping the People Who Keep You in Business? Would you like to comment a little on that for our audience?
Well, yes. That book I wrote based on doing a survey, an exhaustive research of best practices of companies. And this was right at the turn of the century. This is the year 2000 when that book came out. But I was reading every human resource publication I could get my hands on. And every time I read about a company with some novel approach to keeping people, I would document that and collect it and organize it into, at the time I was looking at 4 main ways of becoming an employer of choice. And of course, an employer of choice is just a company that people know about, and they know it's common knowledge that it's a great place to work. And there began to be contests and in local business publications to nominate your company as the best place to work. And eventually I linked up with one of the companies called Quantum Research in Omaha, Nebraska. And they do the engagement surveys. And they had me design an employee engagement survey. And they began to use that. It's the same survey pretty much that I use with my clients right now. It's 36 questions, but it goes out in the different cities. There's a publication of business journals that's they have business journals in cities all over the United States, and companies are invited to take the survey, and so hundreds of companies each year in these cities take the survey, and they analyze the results. And so it's based on, very simple, the companies that score highest on the survey. And so when we had enough data, we had 2.1 million of these surveys that had been done by the year 2010. And so I linked up with a co-author. His name is Mark Hirschfeld, who had been an employee of the same consulting firm I was with at the time, which was Right Management, RIGHT. And together, we read as many of those surveys as we could. Each one of us read or looked at the comments on 200,000 of these surveys. So we were getting a little googly-eyed by doing it. But we came up with, we analyzed those, and based on that analysis, we wrote a book in 2010 called Re-Engage. And it really, the reasons we found are almost exactly the same as the ones that were in my book, The 7 Hidden Reasons Employees Leave. So I've had three books. The first one was Keeping the People Who Keep You in Business. The second one was The 7 Hidden Reasons. And the third was Re-Engage.
Wow, that's phenomenal. That's really amazing. And it's wonderful how you not just showed businesses through your book how your employees are getting disengaged, but also showed them a path and gave them a solution to re-engage them. So that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there are 54 best practices in the book, The 7 Hidden Reasons, and they're very detailed. So it can be used as a very detailed guide for a comprehensive approach to retaining employees.
Right. And I'm sure many organizations are already availing it. Yeah. So coming to the next question, Leigh, in your experience, you've had great experiences across talent management, employee retention, employee branding, and the like. So, what according to you is the future of HR, and how do you think it's really going to evolve?
Well, I think the coronavirus crisis has accelerated a lot of things. The number one being working from home. So I think that's going to continue even after we have vaccines and we have been able to eliminate COVID-19. We are going to continue to see more people working from home because companies now have realized it's possible to be productive. And some of the prejudice against working from home has dissipated. So I think we're going to see new job titles appear, like manager of work at home experience. I think that's something that could happen. I also think I read an article in the Harvard Business Review lately about the future of HR, and it talks about new possible job titles, and one of them is Director of Employee Well-Being. And that correlates with reason number 6, employees leave, which is the general, they're not, work-life balance is not good. And so it becomes more challenging to deal with employees with financial trouble, and depression, anxiety, all of these things have been magnified. So I think we're going to see more roles in HR for jobs like that. Uh, Data security has become very important. The more we work from home, the more we depend on data, and the more we need to reinforce that people can trust that their data is being kept confidential and secure. So I think we're going to be seeing new job titles in that area. And ethics, training managers on the ethics of data security. Um, I think there's going to be a focus on virtual, doing things virtually. There's an actual job title at one company called Director of Virtual Immersion. So IMMERSION, virtual immersion. So we may be seeing that. We're going to see, there's a job title called Chatbot Coach. So these are the kinds of things I think we're going to be seeing. Director of Employee Experience is a job that comes pretty close to what I'm talking about when I talk about employee engagement. And are we a best place to work? What is our reputation as a place to work? And branding yourself as a place to work as we continue to compete for the best talent. Knowing how to brand your organization, use it in recruiting, and so forth is going to be important as well.
Absolutely. HR tech is now slightly going towards remote workforce management systems and how to just manage your systems and into HR automation in a remote way. So absolutely agree with everything that you just mentioned.
And that's where your company comes in.
Right.
Right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, so thank you for that really exhaustive answer. Really appreciate it. Going to the next question, Leigh, do you think, how important rather do you think exit interviews are these days? And do you think it's often overlooked?
I do. I think that there's a lot of cynicism about employee exit interviews because they're not done in a very in-depth way. They're done sort of mechanically. The person comes in, they may fill out some kind of a form, but there's not a lot of in-depth, and I dare say there's not a sincere attempt sometimes to find out the real reason they've left. So some companies have independent consultants do the exit interview.
Thank you so much for that enlightening response, Leigh. That was just so insightful, and I thoroughly agree with you on that one. Thanks a lot once again. It was an absolute honor to interview you, and I genuinely gathered some really fresh perspectives and insights from you. And I had a wonderful, wonderful time, and it was an absolute honor to interview you. And I just feel if I have learned so much in a short interview, I am sure our audience are also greatly going to benefit from this. So thank you. You stay safe. Have a healthy time ahead of you. And I'm really hoping to do a second lap of this in the future. Thank you, Leigh. Bye-bye.